Today, we're kicking things off with an interview with Packing 10, head coach of the Los Angeles Valiant. And after that, we get to talk about how the Seoul Dynasty's performance has gone from incredible to abysmal.
After that, we'll talk about the new hero pool changes along with the new hero pools for the week, and they're unified around being Overwatch League usage. On top of the mailbag that we were supposed to do last week, but pushed to this week because we had a lot of responses.
A lot of responses indeed. I'm Jayne, this is Avast, and welcome to Contested. What's up, guys? Can you take a guess? Are we or are we not in the Frontier Communications studio? Are we?
It's a
No?
mystery.
It's a
It is a
mystery.
mystery. Every
Uh,
time you open the box, Schrodinger's Frontier Communication Studio. Which one are we in? Are we out? I don't know.
Nope, not there. One of these days, it's just going to be like pull down the green screen, and it's actually going to be the studio. I can't wait to do that gag. You all have no idea which week it is, but one of these days we are going to be back in that studio. But unfortunately, not yet. Even though things are starting to open up, we're not quite back in the office yet. But it's time for your Tuesday edition of Contested. So whether you're watching us on YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, or are listening to this in pre-recorded format on Apple Podcasts, is that what
We
it is?
also have Spotify. We got Apple I think it's Apple Podcast. I
I don't
think.
use Apple Podcasts, so I think it's Apple Podcasts.
But then there's other ones too. There's Google Podcast.
I'm not sure if
There's
we're on Google Podcasts. I,
it may if not that there's Spotify. I know we're on Spotify. I know we're on Spotify.
one of those.
It's one of those platforms.
Anyway, before we get into the episode, we're going to start things off pretty quick with Packing 10 joining us on the call. But first things first, you have to have, and I know you've all been waiting for it, the 60-second recap from Favor. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your 60-second Favor recap. The biggest game of this weekend was no doubt the Seoul Dynasty, who lost against the Guangzhou Charge and the Hangzhou Spark. They weren't close games either. In fact, they managed to lose so fast against the Charge that they broke the record that Florida had set against Boston just last week. More on them later in the episode. Moving on, the New York Excelsior dropped the ball in the second half of their series against the Shanghai Dragons and ended up getting reverse swept. Who Are You had a rather questionable performance on Echo, especially compared to Ding, who only got better as the series went on. Say Bjolby tried his damnedest to carry on Tracer, but the entire team struggled as Shanghai adapted, and with some poor plays by Mano in Map 5, the Dragons were able to just barely close it out. In the second reverse sweep of the weekend, also happening on Saturday, the Valiant managed to end their 4-game loss streak with a beautiful comeback against the Atlanta Reign and a phenomenal performance by Shax. This is the first time this year that Valiant has managed to win Game 5, and we'll be asking head coach Packing 10 if this signals a turnaround for the team or if it was just a lucky win. And that is your Favor 60-second recap.
Just as good as always, Jane. I
Yeah.
think I like each week. It's a tradition now where we're sort of separated our segments off. Obviously, we can flip back and forth whenever I could do the favor, you could do the popping off. But I always like to hear the soothing monologue of the favor recounted by you. It
I
gets me
didn't
in the
have any
zone.
zingers this week.
No, but it was like a nice, smooth sailboat.
It's one of those
It
ones where
calms
it's
the
like we just
storms.
gotta lure people into that it's the relaxation. It's like the pre-meditation techniques or yoga. It's everything. It's the segment that just gets people in the mood, right? Just
It does.
it sets the tone for the episode. And although I think it really is kind of up in the air what Packing 10 is going to say is about his team. I've yet to had a head coach admit that their team is on the down, heading towards the pits. So it might be a little bit too much of a giveaway which way Packing 10 is leading about his own team. But such is life.
Yeah, we'll know soon enough because we are getting him in call to learn what he has to say. More than likely, I would imagine that coaches aren't going to be dumping on their team.
That's too
But I
bad.
don't even think it's fair for us to dump on his team either. But we're currently getting him in. He has having some tech problems before this started. Just a heads up. But wait,
Is,
there
is
he
he,
is.
hey, look
Hey,
in
is that him?
beautiful HD video audio sound.
Oh, it works.
Welcome.
It works.
Welcome, my friend.
How's the cams holding up? It appears.
It's good. It's good. I think. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well,
Fingers
how
You're
are you
looking
today?
good.
How are you?
I'm,
Huh?
I'm
You
good.
doing well?
I'm good. Yeah. Just had a little bit of practice before this, and then hopping right in here and back to the grind afterwards. So
Yeah, makes
it's a good
sense.
day. Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you're not the tech support person over there, just the coach, because
I'm glad about that too. Yeah. It'd be a dangerous world over here. So they don't want me doing that.
Unlucky.
Madden
Well,
does.
before we get into the interview proper, let's just have you introduce yourself for those who are not in the know. We did the last thing for Albert, so we're not saying that you're not a
Sure.
big deal in the Overwatch community, because of
Sure.
course you are. You're
Thank you,
super big deal.
The biggest.
The
the
biggest.
biggest
Yeah,
of deals.
sure.
But for those ignoramus in the audience who don't know who you are, mind giving us a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm packing 10. I started Overwatch coaching back in 2016, maybe. Coached with a team called Hammers Esports, then went on to Envision. Did really well in Contenders Season 0. Got the team to the LAN finals there, and then moved on from there to coach Angry Titans. Got them to the European finals of Contenders, and then got picked up beginning of last year by LA Valiant as an assistant coach. And then after Moon got fired, I got promoted to interim head coach, and had a pretty good run through the second half of the year last year. And then now I'm here full time and working with Immortals and loving life. So
I love it that you're just straight to the point. Just no euphemism about that situation.
Moon
just,
got fired. No one else
mean-
just. Everyone's like, oh, they left Moon. Moon might have departed, but they were just like, Moon.
after
Shitter, he's
Moon's
gone.
departed.
I mean, it's us like. There's nothing wrong with the guy, you know. I mean, he's we just see we don't really see eye to eye on things, and I don't know. We didn't have good results.
How was the jump from assistant coach to head coach? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a lot different than what I would have expected it to be. Everybody who's in tier 2, who's coaching and stuff, always thinks like, oh yeah, I could just go and be a head coach in Overwatch League, and you don't realize like you have a lot of players to manage, a lot of staff to manage. Last year, when I took over, it was Stoop and Dongsu, and then we picked up Promise, and then eventually got Reprise, and like there was a bunch of players, and some of them are very experienced, some are inexperienced, and everybody needs nurturing. And it's not like Contenders when you say, hey, I'm the head coach of the team, and all you do is macro. And it's like, well, I ask a lot of tier 2 coaches like what their strengths are, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm really good at macro. I'm like, well, no shit, everybody in tier 2 is good at macro because there's only one coach, right? Like, like what about player dev, what about scouting, what about people like personal development and things like that. So there was a lot more to it, and getting thrown into the fire, I'm very lucky I have my military roots and structure to keep me there. So it was a great experience, and I'm very blessed to have it. So,
Well, I have to say, now that you brought up some of those examples, because one of our questions we're going to lead into was sort of what is sort of the typical year for a coach, but I'm
Sure.
actually going to more of like morph that in a way now, morph the question. And Jayne, I think you should piggyback off this since you have previous coaching experience and I have not, obviously, is more of, so when you listed off all those other things like player development and scouting and all those other things, like the micro aspect as opposed to macro,
Sure.
how much of that do you feel is do you think a good head coach is someone that's able to do all of those perfectly, or a good head coach is someone that's able to identify others that they can delegate those sort of responsibilities to?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter, because my job is to develop the vision, right, and put a structure in place and get people who can put my vision into action, right. And that's what we had last year, and that's what we had at the beginning of this year. And now with just me and Gumba, it's a little bit more hands on. But that's what it's all about. I think it's extremely important for a head coach to be knowledgeable about the game and have the background to be able to do everything and be involved in everything. But it's a lot about finding good people and knowing who the good people are, and people who work well together and will fit into the system. And it's the same way with players. I mean, that's how we went about our scouting this year, was find people who would buy into the vision of, hey, we don't have the big superstar players anymore, but we have a lot of young guys who are hungry, who are extremely talented, and they might be a little bit rough around the edges, but if you give them the right care, and you care about them outside of the game, you care about them inside the game, and you hold them on a short leash and say, hey, listen, like, we're going to improve, and if you're not improving, that's a problem. Then the team will be successful. And that I really truly believe that. So that's kind of one of the things that I think is extremely important, and one of the things that Immortals and I both align on, which is always a good thing. So
I actually didn't realize that you had a military background, and that kind of rings true a lot for myself. Is that when I was going through the tier 2 coaching system as well, it was very strange. And trying to, I was new to esports at the time, and trying to go through that system, it was like there was no real information on there on what a coach needed to do. Like every single team did it differently, and even Overwatch League teams, it's very, very some do probably 2017 or something like that. Oh, did
Are
we
we
go
back?
Mr. Roboto?
Yeah, there's a little bit of robot for me.
Oh, unlucky.
Oh yeah, I was wondering if that was me or not. I was just
Yeah,
standing
no, I
there,
was
just
standing there.
nodding. I was like, yeah, yep. I don't know what he's saying, but yep, sounds good.
Okay, I'll just skip to the very end of the
Sure.
question. Early on in the Overwatch League, I know that some Overwatch League franchises considered picking up coaches from traditional sporting backgrounds, whether it was basketball or football or whatever.
Sure.
Of course, now the precedent is primarily with people who have experience endemic in esports. Do you think that that's the best way of actually having coaches come into the system? Or do you think coaches coming over from the more traditional side of sports or a different professional background like the military is superior?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm really biased towards my military background because I think a lot of kids in esports, I say kids, they're young men, but a lot of them in esports they're young. That's what they are. They're young, they're inexperienced, it's their first time away from home. They need to be structured. They need to have someone who can help them out and take care of them and things like that, and put them into an environment where they can be successful, because that's a lot of problems with the isn't the talent, it's the making sure that they're up and awake and ready to go and practicing and getting everything out of practice and doing things and being a productive person. So I am kind of biased towards my military background, but I mean, I think it'd be tough to say either way. But my goal as as a coach is not to just stay in Overwatch. I'd love to coach other games, multiple games. I'd love to coach sports, traditional sports. I mean, that's a big background of mine too. So I would love if esports coaching and I guess traditional sports coaching ended up becoming hand in hand with the interchangeable concepts of, hey, if you have these values, that you'd be able to be successful in them, because it's something I really do want to do, and it's something that I really want to try to be a pioneer on and say, hey, listen, just because you're an Overwatch coach doesn't mean you can't coach League of Legends or basketball or whatever. So at least I hope so. It's one of those things.
So you think there's a possibility at some point that they could sort of have that mix of, like, if you are a coach in one game, you can be a coach in another game? Because also Overwatch did have that early on, and to some
Sure.
extent we've had players even from other games, but the traditional mindset has always been, if you don't really know the game, how are you going to coach it?
Sure.
But you think that you could just hopefully in the future mix the two, or maybe
Well,
coaching could just be so ubiquitous that you can move between game to game?
I think knowledge grows with games, right? So it's the same thing when you look at someone like myself. I never technically played the game professionally. I quit the game very early to start learning the game and understanding the game.
Mhm.
So I think the barrier for that in a lot of these games is the fact that players tend and early on in the games tend to not respect people who weren't professional players, and that was a big issue with Overwatch when it started. And it was hard to find opportunities. And what I ended up doing initially in Overwatch was I said, hey, listen, I think I'm smart and I want to coach a team. And I actually ended up coaching a team that Arrow was a player on. It was Arrow and Tickety and a couple other guys.
Oh
And,
wow.
and that was the first team I ever coached. And if you're a smart person and you're passionate about it, then I think you'll find a way to be successful. And when it comes to different games, when new games come out, even old games, I mean, if you want to learn about the game and you want to know the game, you can always do that. But a lot of people don't have the leadership qualities and the structured side of things and the mindset and ability to, I guess, find and identify a vision and put that vision into place and find people to do it. And I think those are the more important things, regardless of if it's traditional sport or an esport or anything. Those are the more important things, and the knowledge will come. If you want to learn, you can learn. So that's how I see that.
You mentioned that professional players or players early on the scene, and even these days, there's been stories of professional players not really respecting coaches. What's your opinion on professional players making the transition to being a coach?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it's one of those things that like I've seen players who want to be coaches who've been players for long times but don't really understand the game really well, or don't have the qualities of what a good coach would have. And then there's others that are. I think it depends case to case and how bad they want to do it, and they need to understand that coaching is not a thankful job. It's very thankless. You work tons of hours. You don't typically get paid as much as the players. You get all the shit if you lose. or you make a decision and it's not a right decision. I mean, I saw people roasting us for running Ash Torb, and you know, I mean, it's like, hey, listen, we committed to the vision. That's what we thought could win, and we almost won with it. And we're playing against a team that, you know, in my opinion, is one of the best teams in the league. So, you know, it's one of those things that you take the bumps with it as it goes. But yeah, I think the most important thing is they got to understand what comes with it, because it's not fun. You do it because you want to win and you love competing and you love being a figure for, you know, people to, or at least your players to learn and grow and develop under. Not so much for, you know, popularity or money or anything like that. So.
You're telling me coaches aren't filling up stadiums over there? People aren't cheering. It's like, oh, packing.
Yeah,
Yes.
No, I haven't gotten that yet.
Up the stadiums there.
Well,
we also veered a little bit wildly, but it's
hey, man, if we're gonna go down a rabbit hole, let's jump in with.
But we have veered wildly off of our questionnaire list that we had. So hopefully Valiant doesn't get mad at us that we've sort of gone off script a bit. But
10 messages
I think
from Valiant. What?
No, Mike's not gonna get mad at us. Mike's gonna be fine. But you know, they're all reasonable questions. I guess bringing up also your recent performances too is that you guys have had, honestly, a tough couple of games. You have lost 4 out of your past 5 games, but they've been close losses against good teams. And now then you just beat the Reign, and you also beat the Reign in a reverse sweep scenario too. How do you think for example, I guess the most notable this is the Reign match. So you've been playing all these good teams, and then you're losing early. What did you do as a coach to identify in that Reign match to say, come back out, be like, this isn't working, this is working? Sure. And did it just boil down to just let's play KSP because KSP is really good at video games? Yeah,
well, I mean, that always helps. You know, we had a couple of different strategies going into this week. You know, we liked our Echo Dive when we were playing with the Ply. We thought Shax has been playing great, and whenever there's an opportunity for him to play on Tracer, we like to have him do it. He did pound. It was great. It was outstanding to watch. And you know, what actually happened was we were supposed to run the Echo Dive on only our Koth maps. And when they ended up running the Zarya comp, we were kind of trying to troubleshoot with, hey, listen, we think they're going to run it again. If Fried's in the game and Hawk's not in the game, he's probably playing Zarya, because if they wanted to play Diva or Sigma, we'd assume that they're going to play Hawk. So we were talking about it in between, well, as map 1 is going on, we're talking about what we want to do for map 2, and we came to the conclusion that we really wanted to run Dive into it. So even though Apply didn't practice any Hollywood all week, we said, hey, listen, we're going to do this. We want to run Dive. We think we could run the mirror. And fundamentally, I still think that was the right call. Ended up losing the map because of, you know, bad communication and bad fundamentals. But then when we were sitting there at halftime, we were talking about what could we do better, and we came back to that solution of, hey, if they want Fraud on Zarya, then we just run a comp that abuses, you know, the shit out of Zarya with the Tracer and an Ash, and you know, we'll play a more spam comp and we'll go from there and we'll see what happens, and then we'll talk about, you know, adjustments or things we could change after that. So we came out with that map 3, and they decided they didn't want to make any changes going into Dorado, and came out in the same thing. So we just said run it, and then we played Busan this week maybe one time because we really wanted to focus on the early maps. And we ran Apply and Shax on it, and we ran Dive on every map, and we said, hey, listen, we got to stick with this. Like, they're not making any changes. They haven't adapted to it yet. And if they want to win the game, let's force them to adapt. And if, you know, we had, you know, a strategy or two in place if they did, but we said, hey, if they want to win the game, make them adapt. If they don't want to adapt, they'll lose the game. And they didn't adapt, and they lost the game, and that's what you like to see. So I think it was a really good job by Gumba. It was a really good job by the players and trusting in us and saying, hey, we're going to put you in these situations. Maybe a little bit uncomfortable. We lost a lot of map 5s recently, but it shows the leadership by example of, hey, listen, like, one of the reasons why we weren't successful against, you know, these map 5s against Glads, and we lost a close one to Dallas too, which we should have won, was the inexperience of the roster playing in these map 5s, and they would always bunker down and play to not lose rather than play to win. So, you know, it kind of showed the lead by example of, hey, listen, we were putting, even though we didn't practice on this, we were putting the roster in that we want to win the game, and we're playing as coaches, we're playing to win. So you do the same, and let's play to win. Let's be aggressive. Let's, you know, do the fundamental things we know how to do, and we'll be fine. And they did it, and they executed, and it was great. So.
Well, you already grabbed my last question. I was going to bring up the map 5s, but you already covered that one. So
I guess then it ties into sort of, since now you have to play Rain, because I believe you played Rain because of the fact that this is part of the new format changes for May, because now you get to play the Atlantic Division, correct?
Yeah.
That's the
Thank
reason you
God.
guys were playing Rain at all. Yeah. So how do you feel about those format changes for May and having sort of a tournament style system, which is similar
Yeah.
to the CDL system, but obviously it's not quite the same? Do you think that's, and also obviously the merging of the regions now where there's no West or East? Do you prefer that as a coach? Do you disagree with that method? Do you like how it was originally put out? Like what do you
Yeah.
feel about it?
I mean, I like it, right? It gets frustrating when you play Shock 3 out of 4 weeks, and like our division, we played Vancouver early on, and we played Vancouver and Dallas, and then we played Shock 3 times and Glads, and it's like, I don't want to say when can you catch a break, because I think all those games were winnable, but it's like, iron sharpens iron. But at some point, you hate looking at the board and being like 2-5 or 2-6 or whatever the hell it was. Like, we want to win games, and we think we could beat any of the teams in the Atlantic Division any day of the week. We think our division is extremely tough, and we're not going to bitch and moan about it, but we'll play them every single time. We'll try to win. But it's nice to be able to get a change of scenery and play different teams and different styles and all that kind of stuff. And I think the tournament format will be really interesting. I think it'll be better viewing for the fans, because a lot of times people want to watch, like when it's live events, they want to watch the Overwatch League when it's in the stadiums. They want to see everybody playing in Dallas and the crowd going nuts and all that stuff. And it's hard this year because there's none of that. And it's, what we're doing right now. Everybody's on a webcam. It's not live. It's tough. So I think it'll be a good change. I really do. The only thing that kind of sucks about the online playing East to West is, if the server's not good for us on the professional client, which it isn't. We got 90 ping when we're playing against Atlanta, and they got 40, and that's
actually a pretty big difference. Yeah, I guess expected.
And I mean, it's just a routing issue for where the server is to where we route through. But it's one of those things. Like, we talked to players before the week, and we said, hey, listen, ping's not an issue. That's not a problem. If you die because of ping or anything, I don't want to hear it. I don't want you to say it. We're going to practice on East all week, and it's something you got to get through, because every single game we're playing against the East teams, at least for now, is on the East servers. So we're at a little bit of a disadvantage there, but we just think we're a better team, and we think the better team will win. So it'll be nice for a change of scenery for a couple weeks at least, and especially going into the tournament. So.
I've actually never heard this saying. What did you say? Iron sharpens iron. I've never heard that saying before, but I really like it. I also like
we use that in Marine Corps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Marine Corps thing. But you say you said when can you catch a break? And thankfully, I think one's headed your direction, because next week is Boston Uprising, and then the week after that is Toronto Defiant. So yeah. I wish you luck in both of those games. But from the sounds of it,
thank you.
It seems like you're doing a great job with the team. Avast, any final words for Pac?
I mean, speaking of, do we have to wrap up now? Are we about out of time, do you think?
Yeah, we're getting close. We're
pretty much
to
there.
Time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's fine.
You had a good question. Let's do it.
I had a good, one final question, because it was like on the topic of breaking, the Vancouver Titans. So
Sure.
But this is going to go in opposite direction that what you're thinking. So instead of your thoughts on the Titans, it's more of in the topic of the Titans, sort of whatever's happening with them in the meantime. People brought up that a lot of top tier 2 teams at the contenders level can beat like half of Overwatch League. Do you feel like, let's say, for example, if the wildest rumors are true and Titans pick up like a contenders level team, do you feel like that is at all vindicated, and it's something that you could expect like your team to actually square off and have problems against contenders teams that are really good if they're saying they could potentially play half of all teams at the Overwatch League level? Or is that just ego? Is that just ego that's speaking for the examples like that?
Yeah, I think it's just ego. Like now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are a few teams in the league that you look at the bottom.
There are
of the
definitely at least 2 to 3.
A few teams that'll have a hard time, but yeah, I think it's ego speaking. I mean, I kind of mentioned it before, but it's like everybody throughout the contenders and all that stuff, they want to feel vindicated about what they're doing and everything, and it's tough. And I mean, if the org picks up a straight contenders team, they're gonna have a hard time. They're not gonna be the champions. They're gonna go through the same bumps everybody else does. I would suggest to them, if they're gonna do that, make sure that they're going through a proper trialing process and recruiting people, because it's tough. Like, yeah, you sign people for synergy then, or just to fill a slot. But I mean, it's going to be tough if that's what they're doing. I think there was someone said at the beginning of the year, we'd be lucky to get out of open division with our roster, and we showed that proper scouting and proper coaching will get you to where you want to be. That comes first, and then everything comes second. So I think it'll be a tough road for them though if they pick up a contenders team. So at least for everybody except maybe the bottom of the barrel teams. So those and even those, I think maybe they'd be closer than people would expect. I don't think it would be a stomp from a contenders team. Maybe the Envy would be okay and would do some work, but still, then I don't think they would make any huge run or anything like that. So
okay. Well, now we're out of time, right? Now we do have to say that we're out of time, correct? I think that's all of our time, right, Jayne?
It is. Yes.
That okay? Well, that's been Packing. Thank you for coming on, Packing 10. Thank
Absolutely.
you for Valiant for allowing him to come on, and that's it for you. So get out of here.
Always a pleasure.
Nah.
I see it.
Yeah, always a pleasure. No, thank you.
All right, bye, guys. Thank you.
I see how it is. See you, Packing. It was LA Valiant was actually in chat too. As soon as we went off script, they said hi. I think
were they? I mean, I'm not surprised. Mike, their GM, he keeps me on close watch at all times. He's a very vigilant man. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's keeping eyes on everything. But we're very good. We're law abiding here.
Oh, yeah. It's a good thing we didn't ask those other questions that LA Valiant didn't let us ask. That would have been real bad.
Yeah,
there was a whole list of them. LA Valiant.
We have pages.
Just pages of questions they wouldn't let us ask. Brutal. The censorship in the year of our Lord 2020. Can you imagine?
It happens, though. It happens. It does happen. Speaking things that are occurring in the year of our Lord 2020.
Everything this year. Seoul. We're here already.
Seoul is getting dominated. Seoul was the team to have then that actually got so destroyed that they broke the other speedrun record that you talked about earlier during the favor segment. About they had a 23-minute game. It was like 23 minutes 7 seconds.
I know that 23:53
versus Charge, correct? Wasn't it? It was versus Charge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean,
we're talking that Florida managed to beat Boston in 24 minutes, but Seoul, a team that everyone was thinking was like number one, just got slapped hard by multiple teams. It was not nice. I think that we've got a team that they played 2 games, and then people were considering them number 1 or number 2, somewhere up there with Vancouver Titans, and then Vancouver Titans completely fell apart. And then they're like, oh, Seoul must be the undisputed number 1. And then Seoul Dynasty fell apart. And we're not just talking about like they started losing games. We're talking about it's like they had a 3-game win streak. They looked really good. All of those were 3-0s. Bam, bam, bam. And then the most recent 3-0s that happened were in the exact opposite direction. So it's not just a 3-game win streak to a 3-game loss streak. It's 9-game win streak to 9-game loss streak. And then against against the Charge, that loss was so brutal that Seoul Dynasty didn't even score a single point on any of the maps. Not a single one. Even Boston, in the Florida-Boston game, managed to get 2 on Dorado, I think it was. So it's like they didn't just lose all the maps. They lost all of the checkpoints on all of the maps. And then in the game against the Hangzhou Spark, they only got 2 map points. 2 map points in the entire series. And this is a team that it doesn't even it blows my mind. It doesn't even make sense that the Hangzhou Spark, they've played the Hangzhou Spark twice. One time they 3-0'd them. The other time they got 3-0'd by them. So something serious has changed here for the Seoul Dynasty. It's not just like they got 2 lucky wins. Like their wins were against the Los Angeles Valiant and the Los Angeles Gladiators, teams that at the very start of the season were considered to be even higher than they are now. So it makes sense where they were placed earlier in the power rankings. But this absolute devastation that's the only word that my brain
destruction
can find.
I mean, just peel apart, vaporized. It went into the event horizon, whichever one you want to put. It's bad.
And people, and they're like, I'm trying to find reasons, and it's like I'm watching the games, trying to figure out like what is going wrong here. People are being like, oh, they haven't just adapted to the the Echo patch, but they played against the Shanghai Dragons. I understand that the Shanghai Dragons 3-0'd them, but that wasn't on the Echo patch. And yes, the Shanghai Dragons are good, but their match against New York showed that the Shanghai Dragons aren't nearly as good as we thought they were. It's just that this was a glimpse, not that Seoul. It was like this was the very start of the fall from grace, and we didn't really recognize that the Seoul had started sucking so hard. When a team looks this disorganized, sometimes you can be like, just played a really strong opponent, because these relative power levels in Overwatch sometimes are really hard to tell. So, what was it that we said last week? That we said that this was probably one of the largest gaps between first and second that we'd seen?
Yes.
So that was very probably due to the fact that the Seoul Dynasty had probably the largest singular week drop in power rating that have we seen a team fall apart this badly
in 1 week? I mean, not in this level. Not in a singular week. I don't think. Maybe over a stage back when we had stages, but never over a week like this.
Yeah,
this was just bad. And the thing is that there's no double shield to carry them anymore. And a lot of people said like, okay, they're really good in double shield, but then I think we have to talk about the fact that in the Charge game where they got speedrun, in the Dragons game, they were playing Marvel on Diva. And when they have Michelle.
Yeah, they did that in the Shanghai Dragons game as well as the Charge game. Now they actually
and it was abysmal.
It was bad.
It was really bad.
I mean, almost everything they did was bad, but that was especially bad.
So maybe we're going back to classic Seoul, because Seoul has looked bad before. In previous seasons, Seoul has looked bad, but they've never looked this bad. And in addition, they've also had quintessential problems of not knowing how to use the roster before. And we're seeing it here again. New coaches, new roster, same old Seoul. Not knowing how to substitute people or play people on their roles. Or they had limited success actually last year with the 12-man roster before people departed things. They actually had some limited success, but that was a KDG who's now the head coach of the Fusion. So
who's doing really well.
Who's doing pretty well, right? So I do think, and is also actually doing a pretty decent job of managing their roster there with Fusion. So I think maybe that's more to do with it. But you just have to ask, if you don't know what players are playing what, and you're looking this bad, it goes beyond these issues, because one player can't make a team get speedrun so hard that it breaks every other speedrun, even the Boston Uprising level speedruns. That is a whole separate set of issues. There's just no way a team that looked as good as Seoul and early on has plummeted this far just because of a simple substitution. It just can't be possible.
Yes. It's these are one of the things that just really drives a person crazy. There's so many things. We're seeing things like, the Vancouver Titans that fall apart. There's the rumors that they're picking up a contenders team. Their players, I think at this point, we've had one player publicly released, 2 coaches have been released, no word about the rest of the roster, but you're seeing these teams kind of fall apart, and we get no explanation. It's very clearly not a gameplay thing, and fans of these teams are just left wondering, what's happening behind closed doors? How could this possibly be? For Seoul Dynasty fans, it's probably they share a little bit of a kinship with the Dallas Fuel, where they are kind of used to the suffering and pain that happens when a team kind of performs less than expected. But this is, there are a lot of people who are probably really happy with the Seoul Dynasty, and then such an inexplicable drop it's really heartbreaking.
And it also brings into question about a lot of people have bringing up other recasters with Wolf, who and Wolf, as everyone knows, is the biggest stan of the Asia region that you will ever meet. And Wolf, one of the cast we were watching, said, now we have to question, how strong is the Asia region really? If Seoul is getting dumped to this hard, and also New York comes over and brings Dragons to a map 5. And and I do think there are some weird conclusions being drawn there, because it's rather than us being so shocked that New York was able to do well against Dragons, maybe we should be like, wow, New York's a lot better than expected. I know that might go over well with one side of the table here.
Yes.
It might not go over well.
I tell you, because that was a game that happened at 3 a.m. or something for us, wasn't it?
I mean, there always happened 3 to 5 a.m.
But I woke up super early, and I woke up and checked my phone, immediately turned on the stream, and I saw New York 2-0, and I was like, oh my God, my world is over. I was like, not only are Chengdu underperforming, but New York is beating the team that we just hyped up to be the best in the league. I was in shambles. I was in bed, 3 a.m., cold sweats. I was like, how am I possibly going to justify this on the uncontested on Tuesday? I was like, it was just, my world had ended.
But luckily you were saved.
But luckily I woke up in time, and because I started watching the stream in a nervous panic, The Shanghai Dragons managed to pull it back, and I get to actually, pretend like the New York Excelsior are as bad as I said they were at the very start of the season. To be
Now
fair,
that's the pig-headedness I like to see right there.
Exactly. They are just as trash as I always thought. No, but actually, they played really well. I'll say Bjolby especially played fantastic in that series. But, I've always kind of short-sold Mano a little bit. So there was a little bit of kind of satisfaction when he was the reason why the New York Excelsior did manage to actually get reverse sweep. He made some pretty boneheaded mistakes in that map 5. And Shanghai Dragons was able to capitalize on it. But, Who Are You had a pretty awful performance on Echo. He did pretty good at the start. He had some great plays, copying the Zenyatta, getting the true transcendences, popping off with, the amount of Winstons that we've seen during the second meta is absolutely crazy. But in the second half of the series, he just decided to stop copying tanks entirely and went for Sombra repeatedly. And then Ding, the exact other way, seemed to be learning Echo as the match went on, and he kind of started a lot weaker. And then as the series went on, Ding significantly improved throughout the course of the series. So this was really neat to see Seoul. Yes, New York played well, and then they dropped off, but Seoul or Shanghai Dragons were not a passive participant in this match. They were very much actively improving and adapting as the series went on. Words.
Well, it went wrong for New York. So
yeah, it went wrong for New York, not for Shanghai Dragons. But this is probably one of the largest strengths that I see from the Shanghai Dragons is this adaptability. It's I keep bringing up the loss against the Chengdu Hunters, but they adapted perfectly against the Chengdu Hunters and completely slapped them in the rematch, not 5-6 days later. So Shanghai Dragons' adaptability is really quite strong. I definitely think that we overrated them based on how hard they smashed the Seoul Dynasty and how good we thought the Seoul Dynasty was overall. But yeah, I think the Asian region is good overall. I'd still put them right smack dab in the middle of the Atlantic and the Pacific Division. Atlantic Division, they're struggling. People knew they would struggle. It's come true. And I think that even the upper part of the Atlantic Division is probably really, really close with kind of the best teams of the Atlantic Division there. Did I say that twice? Best teams
you've said it in various manners twice, but it's essentially different points,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna stand. I'm going the opposite direction. Well, not opposite, but like a different direction. In that, I still firmly believe, and I never thought I would come a day where I would somehow disagree with Wolf on the strength of how much better the Asia region is. I never thought there would see a day ever in my life than Apex historian Wolf, but this. I still believe that the Asia region is better than the other regions, though I do think now we're drawing some doubt because before Hunters in the old system, Hunters was just playing against all the other NA teams. So everyone was like, okay, Hunters are decent like last year, but there's clearly a step above them. But now we're seeing that because Hunters is in the Asia region, everyone's like, wow, Hunters are really bad. And it's like, no, they're not that bad. It's just they're in the Asia region is my particular point of view. And I think, yes, is Seoul having historic collapsing into like a neutron star that's spinning at like 1,000,000 miles per hour? Yes, they're collapsing amongst themselves. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what's happening. I can't blame Fissure. Fissure's not on that team anymore, so I can't blame him. I mean, you couldn't really blame him before.
You could.
Yeah, you could. But I still am a firm belief that I think the Asia region is better than the other regions. And I do think that also we maybe underrated New York, even if Who Are You is looking to be the very definition of an extremely feast or famine player, I think is like a big thing.
So you think the Asian region is better than the Pacific region?
I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we differ on that one. Huh.
Yeah. I do. I still stand believe it because I just there's too much history because the only team that has ever historically bucked that trend has been Shock. So I still think that they are better a wholesale than the other regions, and there's just too much history backing it, I think, and there's just too much talent backing it. Now, obviously, I'm open to being wrong because if I'm not open to being wrong, then I will be just dug in and saying whatever. Runaway Now is not at Overwatch League level, as fanboy triggering as that sound, but I do think that they are still better. Is the base point.
This is really interesting to me. This did not come up into pre-show that our difference about the Chinese region was so strong. I want to find a game next week that's like Pacific version Asian region, and we can have a bet on the outcome.
I think we should.
Okay, so what is a Pacific region versus Asian? What words? Asian region game next week. So we have no. Are there any?
I mean, I don't think they've done any. There isn't any there's still no cross divisional play yet because of the fact that they're still in Korea.
Yeah,
and
what about
China.
and we don't have the tournament brackets yet.
Yeah, so we still won't actually. I don't think we're ever actually going to see any like cross regional play for a little bit, because I'm pretty sure now it's like they said how the tournament system works. It's that it's North America and Asia are like the two regions, and that's
right.
it.
Pacific's playing Atlantic, but the Asian,
so it's so now I don't think we're ever actually going to see for a while at least. Who knows? Any sort of cross divisional play really. Like our best indicators are like Titans in Seoul and New York, right? Because they've been in both regions, but who knows what the hell Titans are? And B, who knows what Seoul's doing? So then really our only good barometer is, and I guess maybe London when we ever see them play again, but who knows when London's going to play again. So they're supposed to be soon, I think. I think it's this week, actually.
Yeah, they've only got 5 games played so far. And they are playing next week. They're
Charge.
playing against the Chengdu Hunters.
And Hunters. Charge and Hunters. So we have some barometers, but I mean, the gaps and the team differences, it's tough to tell. New York is the only consistent factor here, it feels.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like at this point, you kind of, I mean, do you consider New York Atlantic Division at this point?
I mean, I would say it would be fair to call, considering that New York's played like 5 games in the Atlantic Division or something before going over to Seoul, going to Korea. Like, I think it's kind of unfair to
easiest wins of their life.
But they still play the Atlantic Division, right? So
I mean, I guess
and they didn't lose. I still think, but the point here is I would say that if they're in the Korea region for longer than the Atlantic Division, then I'll recharacterize them maybe as an Asian.
Yeah, I'm definitely starting to categorize them as a Asian team, and I think the reason that you do that is specifically because those regions are the ones that primarily scrim against each other.
Yeah.
So metas and strengths and trends are all going to very much solidify within teams that practice in those regions. I don't know how long New York's been in the Asian region, but I think it's over a month.
It's been a couple weeks now. Yeah, it's been at least a couple weeks.
So, but I guess we'll have to wait until the May tournament. But that's interesting. I think that the Pacific region is stronger than the Asian, and you think the Asian region is stronger.
Well,
than the
we'll
Pacific.
look for something to somehow go head to head on it.
This is going to have to become a blood feud. Irreconcilable.
A blood feud. It's got a lot more serious than I think. It's like those who loses, they will sacrifice their blood to the chalice. Like, I don't know. Like that's a lot more serious than I would think.
I mean, if you aren't going to go all in, are you even going to bet? Like, yeah.
If you're not shedding blood, are you even talking about Overwatch League, bro?
Yeah. Come on. We take things seriously. There's no casuals allowed in this podcast. Come on.
Well, speaking of casuals, because I'm going to hit you once again with another patented Avast segue.
My God. Can we just say that your segues are top tier?
Patented over there. I'm making mad royalties on each segue. But
can you please make a segue next time? Just speaking of blood feuds. That's good.
Speaking of blood feuds, that would be a great segue in addition to that. But casuals got what they wanted in this next segment, which is hero pools have changed again.
Yes, and pros got what they wanted too. I think
everyone. I mean, I think everyone's kind of happy over this, right? I think we can finally say, with the new hero pool changes, that this is pretty much what we wanted from the beginning, for the most part.
See, the segue could have been, speaking of blood feuds, one's just been settled between the Overwatch community and Team Ford. You could have done that.
I want to save the speaking of blood feud segue for something that's far more dramatic, though.
Okay. Well, you have to store that one in your back pocket. But yes, if you guys haven't heard, the hero bans have finally been changed to something that somewhat resembles something created by somebody with common sense. Amazing how that happens. So the big changes to the hero pools, of course, that the Overwatch bans are going to be based off of playtime in the Overwatch League, and they're only going to be for high-level elos in ranked. So people under the SR of 3,500 will be able to play any hero they want at any point in time, but those in Masters and above are going to be subjected to the same hero bans as the Overwatch League, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, and then I think more importantly for me in a lot of ways is that now the hero pools are entirely determined by Overwatch League usage stats, and not by ranked usage stats.
I love it,
and and which is great, fantastic, because also finally we didn't get to ban May, but we get to see May in the list with a high probability of being banned at least, and that is something to soothe my soul.
It's the little victories that help you sleep at night, you know. The comfort that we get when we cry in the shower.
And they were still able to ban Reaper because Reaper was a very heavily used hero. So we got something out of it. Though I do think it was kind of tragic because we're in a weird dimension now, Jayne, because Brigitte being banned now means you can no longer play dive. Can you think about that? Can you think about that for a second? Because Brigida is one of the band. Because our band heroes are Brigida, Reaper, Rhine, and what was the other one? It was like
I completely forget.
I can't remember what the other one was. But the
Yeah.
point here is that with Brigida being banned, we can no longer play Echo or
That's
Tracer.
so fun, and it is kind of weird too that that's the case because like traditional Lucio Zen dive, the Lucio is primarily there for like mobility, but primarily to protect the Zenyatta, right? And then now you're seeing that the Lucio's heavy usage is moving around these really deathball-y objective-based teams. Then if you do need to go like really high lethality, and then just protect the Zen format, the Brigida's better. I'd never actually clicked to me that banning Brigida.
It's a very weird universe we live in.
Dive.
So we'll probably see a lot of spam and stuff like that. That's what most of the professionals, pro players, and the coaches are predicting. We're just going to see a lot of spam comps with like double shield and such. But I just found that really funny.
The reason that we didn't remember who the last ban was is because it was Ashe.
Oh yeah, it was Ashe. That's right.
The one time we got consistent Ashe play in League,
and she's immediately banned.
Can't have that. Can't have that.
So just funny. A little funny anecdote there, and I think overall we're all in agreement. Good stuff. I do find it brings us back to another point too of when I said like our main complaints with it always been we seem to iterate through every decision before getting to the one that everyone wants in the end.
Yeah, like we will
that.
end up with a good system eventually. It's just it's the process.
We have to go through
always
every
seems so painful.
Example first. So I think that's like it's like almost like it's like if we replaced from that old Winston Churchill like quote of like if we replaced Americans with Blizzard, it's like Blizzard will do the right thing after they've exhausted every other option or whatever. But then that was the old Winston Churchill quote where he's like Americans will do the right thing after they exhausted every other option first. I'm drawing some parallels.
My way of telling stories has rubbed off on you. I love it.
Yeah, you think so? Is that a Jayne style storytelling?
That was definitely a Jayne. So you remember that one thing that this completely obscure person said?
Winston Churchill is not obscure. It's not obscure.
To Americans, it probably is.
I would hope that Winston Churchill is not obscure. I would hope not. This is a pretty recent piece of history that's pretty big thing. World War II. Like, maybe you heard of it. It involved the world, so more for the most part. So I would hope that release it. But that's really it on hero pools, honestly. We didn't have much to say at this point. We covered it like what, 8 times?
Yeah. I think this is finally the last time we're gonna cover hero pools because we have covered it a lot. We'll keep this one short because it's like, hooray! The end of the saga. And the end of the saga means that we need a segue into our next topic. You want to pull one out of your hat?
Well, speaking of the end of the saga, we need to talk about last week's mailbag, which was so now we can finally finish that one off because we pushed it to this week. See, that's an excellent. Yeah. You can just hand me any line and I'll just throw it out there.
Welcome to Contested, where Jayne tells bad stories and Avast does crazy segues.
I don't think our stories are bad. I don't think the stories are bad. It's more of the fact it's the content of the story and its delivery, right?
I mean, they're great. They always sound so great up here.
Well, because like I like orange juice, but like if I were to have to consume orange juice through an IV, I would like orange juice a lot less. So that's how I view your stories, right? The content of the stories is probably good, but the delivery method is suboptimal.
Do you have experience receiving
drinking orange juice through IVs? No.
Like...
This is more of just an example of like what I'm trying to identify.
That seems like a very, very strange analogy to just jump to immediately.
Is it? I mean, I don't know. I could have picked any substance.
You don't know if receiving orange juice intravenously is weird?
It could have been any substance, though. I could have been like, I like brushing my teeth, but I hate it when a really large guy brushes my teeth for me. Like, it could be any sort of example.
Just cut. We're done. We're done.
No, we're not done just yet because we still have mailbag.
We have to. Okay.
We still have to do mailbag.
I mean, you did the segue. Do you want to start us off?
No. I did the segue. Now it's your turn. Now you get to do the first, first mailbag.
Okay. The first one's from Brandon Ellsbury. I'm gonna sit up for this one. Overwatch as a casual experience is alive and oh yeah, the topic was is the game dying? Which that's what the mailbag was. Which spawned as usual.
Did we have any more? Was it just that? Was that our only topic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just asked. This was when everything was imploding, right? When we had our Doom and Gloom episode, and then we're like, is everything as bad as people think? And then people let us know. So here's what Brandon Ellsbury thought. He says, Overwatch's casual experience is alive and thriving. Overwatch as a competitive game where skill is key is going through a very strange time. The game is missing its identity. The developers are trying to implement their identity, in brackets, a game where switching is a big part of the game, into the high-level player base. Up until now, in high-level play, the game wasn't played in that way because ults would reset, and during GOATs, the game became so defined that it was not possible to play anything else. With the developers pushing more towards their philosophy of a game where counterpicking is a factor, it is pushing players away. I like hero pools mainly due to variety, but the system being used now, with high levels being the indicator, a ping pong of heroes being taken out, the game is not fun even down in the high silver, low gold trenches. I've stopped playing because of specific hero pools, especially when Widow is banned. Come season 4, 5, if this system stays around, the players who come up under the system of I need to know about 4 to 6 heroes in case one gets banned will be superstars. But right now, the game is not what these pros signed up for. And as terrible as this may sound, the new pros in later seasons will see hero pools as I've always had hero pools. Wait, there weren't hero pools? Wow, the game would be so much different. A lot to unpack there, but you want to give it a stab?
I will. I'll take my box cutter and I'll start unpacking, unstacking the palette. This is my retail experience coming to the fore. So, very relatable. Hashtag relatable. So I would say that overall, I think haven't we had other responses from Brandon before? Brandon Ellsbury. I think we have. And I want to say all of them have been pretty pretty on ball, on point each time. I think the most recognizable thing for me, at least, the thing I talk about is the very closing statement about how future pros will always be thinking like, I've always had hero pools. I've always sort of known the system, and new and old pros really don't. It's like how people that first started playing the game used to have no hero limits and then to 2 hero limits, and this redefining of the structure of roles each time. And we're sort of just seeing Overwatch as a game evolve, I think, at points, especially at an esport level. Of just this anything goes Wild West to we're restricting it down, we're changing the formula each time because realistically the formula before was just honestly not that fun at times. And so, but it still doesn't mean that it makes especially older professional players' jobs any less difficult in terms of refining and changing up how they think about the game. And new players and new professionals are going to have a much bigger edge because not only are they generally younger that have been grinding 18, 20 hours a day, unlike, people that have been in the league because of the fact you just can't and you have other responsibilities, but also they just have an entirely different outlook on the game because they've experienced it in this current state versus its old. So
yeah, it's kind of what did I'm trying to think back to the quote that Packing dropped. It was he was talking about kind of how you learn more from different games where I don't remember the exact wording he said, but when he was talking about coaching different esports, kind of like Valorant or League, is that each game there's a lot of the kind of foundational principles that are the same, but you learn something new from each one of them. And it's very, very similar to the different metas in the Overwatch League where it's dive or goats or anything like that. As well as just the different systems. You learn different skill sets when there are allowed to be things like triple DPS or your 5 DPS or something. If the skills that are required to be successful in like a 5 DPS matchup because all of your team was extremely toxic and none of them wanted to play tank or support, it might be a different level of Overwatch, but you still learn different skills when the game is like that, and it never will be like that again now that they've refined it. So I do think that there's some power to veterans, and the point about flexing is good, but yeah. Thank you for the submission, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon. Very, very cogent as always. Because I believe we've gotten submissions from you before, and they've always been pretty topical. And no, I'm not going to segue. Nope. Not going to segue.
Resist.
Because we have another submission from Patches as well, this is sort of a different direction of what Brandon's was, where Brandon's more of the evolution style. Patches is more of very sarcastic style, which I enjoy. Let's start with the opening lines. Overwatch is a dying game. Let's look at the numbers. Oh, wait. We don't have those.
Nope.
Team 4 are extremely secretive about any player statistics and other things. For example, how much money did Overwatch make? What was their player count? When will Overwatch 2 come out? I don't believe that Twitch statistics tell the entire story. What is a player in the metal ranks who have no desire to go pro watch Twitch for? What is a player in the metal ranks? Oh, metal referring to like gold, diamond. I was like, what the?
I've never heard that phrase before, but makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. For example, one of the numbers we have now is how many copies of the game exists, which is 50 million. If we account for 50% of those being Smurf accounts, 50%?
50%?
25 million. Well, I'm assuming this is
25 million
this
Smurfs.
This must be a hypothetical. This must be a hypothetical. If we account for those being perfect accounts, then Overwatch still has more than the viewership on all of Twitch daily. I don't think that is unreasonable. Okay, so it was hypothetical. I don't think that is unreasonable to assume that as much more sizable chunk of Overwatch's player base is on console and doesn't work with Overwatch on Twitch with PC culture. Barrier to entry play on Overwatch delivery must be interested in going pro is extremely high. You need to what will be $1,000 of game equipment, years of practice on a game, and have to catch up with the pros. I do find that part interesting because Overwatch is actually one of those games, especially for a next gen game, that can run on potatoes. Honestly, like it's also like on the flip side, you have Valorant where they don't even have shadows because they literally hard painted them into the map. That's like how low end Valorant is that there's no actual shadow functions.
I mean, I think that one of the games that probably beats Overwatch is League. League you can be running on like I don't even know how old of a computer, but
the Valorant has its own problems too with like particle effects and stuff like that are like killing FPS during the beta. But I do think that point is more I guess I would say it's more likely for going pro. Like the most expensive parts is not honestly the PC at times. It's a lot more the peripherals. Like if you don't get like 144 hertz nowadays at the very like or 120 hertz, like it is such a noticeable difference not having a high refresh rate monitor comparatively to like your average 60 to 75 hertz one. Like especially in a game like Overwatch where the action is so fast, it is insane the difference going between those. And a good monitor like that could be upwards of like $300 to $400 just for the monitor, which is
as much as a console like the Switch.
Yeah. So that sort of investment can be pretty big. And then obviously you want to get consistent FPS. So yeah, sure, you want a good PC. The battle for Texas this week, and obviously remember this in the past, was one of the most, dare I say, most exciting matchups of the year. Was sad, not because it was a bad match, but because it was empty. The match is the biggest rivalry game ever. Texas rivalry, org rivalry, coach rivalry, player rivalry. I miss it, dude. Well, okay, yeah. I mean, I could see where they're coming from. I can't be the only one too. And once it comes back, the game will feel more whole. Will feel. There's a lot of typos in this patches.
You're doing great, Avast. Keep
a lot of typos in this. That means if you want any. As for the path to pro, I'm really sad about Envy releasing their academy team. That means that if you want any, I'm sad about that too. That means that if you want any type of stability in Overwatch, you have to get sold by the Uprising. There needs to be a way for players to make it to the top. Oh wow, I underestimated how long this is, and do it without risking homelessness, starvation, and sanity in the process. Now, I'm going to stop on this point, and then I'm going to jump ahead a bit. But
this man has a laundry list.
I think, I mean, we're beyond laundry list. This is an insane. This is like I don't even know. I can't even make a proper metaphor. But the point is that I think tier 2 a lot of times, and we've talked about this a bit too, because you said like the whole like yell support tier 2, blah blah blah. We overestimate exactly what tier 2 is supposed to be a lot of the times, especially on the player side. I think in particular, because on the player side there are so many. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different now. We're a game that's getting later into its life cycle and had the problems it has at the ecosystem level. So there's less total people entering tier 2. But initially, tier 2, when there's such a high amount of volume in there, and the fact that so much capital is required at the top for the league to really exist, I don't think you're ever really going to get at a point in tier 2 where you really are financially stable. And I think very few games at the tier 2 level are super financially stable. The closest one would probably be like League of Legends because they have mandated academy teams. But I think people overestimate exactly what should be required. And I think also a lot of orgs, even Envy and teams like that were still involved in tier 2 up until recently, had to scale back their expectations of what tier 2 was a lot. Because before we had teams paying really good salaries, honestly, like anywhere ranging between like $3,000 to $5,000 a month for tier 2 salaries, plus housing, plus other benefits, and the infrastructure, like with coaching and stuff. That's a huge investment for a system that there is no guarantee you get a return on of all the time, Like, obviously, it's required to exist for the game. Like, you need tier 2 to funnel the pipeline of players.
I mean, it's beyond not guaranteed. It's almost not expected,
Yeah.
There is no way that your balance sheet, when you are putting that much into an academy team, looks positive. There has to be different benefits, whether it's going to be value to your brand or something like that. But, in the case of Envy, it was player development specifically for future players, wanting good players who were American, were from Texas as well, being a Texas organization and team. but there does come a point where that just doesn't financially make sense. So and there is I try so hard not to be bitter, and this is really kind of coming off of the success of the Fran Overwatch Community Cup this weekend, which Blizzard finally did a little bit of promotion on. It's kind of like, yay, Blizzard did it, but just like your Winston Churchill quote, it's like, why couldn't they have done this earlier? You have Fran's community tournament being promoted on the BNet launcher where they didn't even have contenders on the launcher.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to give you a cookie,
And also they have
Blizzard?
lots of creative freedom as well for that tournament. There was a lot of creative freedom given to that. I have members of my community. I was supposed to participate in it, but I just wasn't able to because I've been having some health issues. So it's like there's definitely plenty of options to make it better, like the Fran Community Cup. And I think those are better solutions, those sort of community driven tier 2 style open circuit stuff, if they're not going to mandate academy. But there is, I think, a misplaced ideal of what exactly tier 2 is, especially for players, because it's why not there's a reason why not everyone and their mother is currently pursuing pro sports, even though pro sports are a much huger market with much more financial stability than esports. Because at the end of the day, it is a gamble. It's a gamble of if you're going to make it, and there's always has to be, and if it wasn't a gamble, then there'd be a lot more people doing it.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm so big on college esports. There's a lot of collegiate teams, especially in Texas. The amount of collegiate esports teams, especially Overwatch teams, is actually quite significant. And one of the largest things that I've kind of it weighs on me sometimes, the amount of people who sacrifice so much to try and make it pro, in a scene that's not well supported, in a game that they have very little chance of succeeding. And I know that primarily that's going to be most of the individual's fault for pursuing something unrealistic, as kind of doom and gloom as that's going to sound. But college esports allows you to kind of compete in that while also working towards something. When you're talking about the points that Packing brought up, for example, where a lot of the coaches in tier 2 aren't really doing anything but macro, like none of that is really preparing them for the professional league if they ever make it in the first place. Whereas, at the college esports level, anything like that, there's enough support there. There are those reasons for being in the semi-professional scene beyond a financial return on your investment. Exactly what I talked about, where there is a benefit for these teams. It's kind of like there's a lot of, I don't have to go through all the reasons why colleges have sports teams. Not all of them are profitable. That's not the point of a college esports team. But it also prepares the people who are really good at this, to maybe get some support on their schooling and learn other skills beyond just how to be good at the macro level of Overwatch. So if and when the scene falls apart, because Blizzard supports it, they're still fine as individuals in their kind of life path sort of thing.
And then to top it off now, to finish it out, now it goes beyond the esport. But the final thing Patches will say, and I'm not going to read all this Patches because this is just a lot. This is a lot, Patches.
I appreciate the manifesto.
I do appreciate that. Yeah, I'm going to condense it though. So pretty much moving on from the esports side, but more of the game side for Patches, is they think Overwatch 2 needs to be an incredible experience. It needs to have a lot of new fresh content, a lot of quality of life changes like leaderboards, for the single player campaign, things like that, because there are going to be single player elements of PoE and player versus enemy PvE elements for Overwatch 2, and it needs to be something to help recapture the interest of players a lot more and to bring them back into Overwatch a bit. Because remember, Overwatch is a 4-year-old game now. It's lasted a while, and since there seems to be at least a waning interest some points in the game at certain aspects, you can have Overwatch 2 to revitalize that. Now, it doesn't really touch upon the competitive aspect. It's very much focused on the campaign side, which I've always felt like the casual side, which is the side that's playing quick play in arcades, is the healthiest aspect of Overwatch. So I really don't think Overwatch 2 needs to have these things to keep these same viewers, because those same players, because they'll probably come anyways. But I think it's also something to think about. It could be interesting to have Overwatch 2 have a much more campaign themed experience at times as content, to where it could capture a whole new set of players or reinvigorate those old players' interest. And it would be exciting. Though he does say that it needs to be Doom level campaign, 20 hours. And I'm like, that's a high expectation for a multiplayer game as tacking on single player aspects. That's a high expectation.
I mean, if we get 20 hours of campaign, I will be utterly shocked. I think that the way that Overwatch and Overwatch 2 will likely, go is if you're talking about the events, they have high replayability, which I think is the point. You can play the same mission with different heroes, with different teams, try and do it different ways. They've looked at Overwatch 2 where you can customize different abilities. So maybe you can do the same sort of raid experience, but with, your sleep dart or your anti-nade being buffed in different ways in different directions. So I definitely think that they're moving more towards kind of like the replayability things. And, despite how casual a game is, Overwatch has a massive casual community. A lot of people who love the art, a lot of people who love the lore of Overwatch. Like, really, the game is rather bare bones for people who don't like play competitively. There's people who kind of they play quick play, and then when an event comes out, they play the events. But there's no real kind of like meat and potatoes for the casual crowd, and this will definitely give that. But especially for people like you and I, the competitive community, the people who enjoy watching the Overwatch League, I honestly don't think that the Overwatch 2 release is going to do much for present company.
And also, I think with that, we have pretty much we got our mailbag. We've also hit about the end of our episode here. We had a pretty lengthy episode, all things considered, a little bit over with the interview and everything like that, I think. But also, reminder: no off the break tonight.
Yeah.
Because remember, off the break for everyone that was watching for that has been moved to once a week now with Lando. So there's no off the break after us. You're gonna have to wait till Thursday. It is Thursday, right?
Yes.
You're after us, yeah, for Lando and off the break. So no off the break after this. And I guess that's it. I was expecting a bounce from there. I was like, okay, throwing it to Jayne, and Jayne's like, ooh, and it missed.
I was waiting for a segue.
No, I have no other segues there. But I mean, really, that's it. That's all I got.
That's okay. Well, that was your Tuesday episode of Contested. I've been saying, I think we saw one comment on Twitter, one comment on Facebook, and there were some YouTube people today. But as usual, shout out to the Twitch crowd. You're the most popular, I suppose. All the cool kids hang out on Twitch, apparently. So hello to all of you. We see your comments during chat. Appreciate all the engagement and discussion. I'm not sure. Do you watch it, Edge?
We need a mailbag. We need a mailbag.
What are we doing?
We need a mailbag for all of the people in Twitch and YouTube and Facebook and all of those people. We actually have to mailbag. So I think something that we can easily bring on in what I think is that for Packing, we had that interview with Packing. Packing said that he thinks you can coaches can go from game to game to game and be successful. And he thinks that it's something that's on the way for esports. Do you agree? Do you think, let's say, for example, Jayne had continued to coach, he could have gone and been an all-star coach in League of Legends, or hell, he said Packing brought up traditional sports. He said basketball. Do you think esports can transition from esports to traditional sports? Do you think it transfer from game to game? What do you think? Do you think a coaching skill is that ubiquitous, chat, from everywhere? That's my mailbag, at least. I don't know if you
read out your answers on Thursday. Homebound 11, if you're chat, I'm sure he's going to post a thread on Reddit about what you think the coach's transferable skill set is. But we'll discuss that on Thursday and more. Hopefully, we finally get to figure out what the Vancouver Titans are doing, because is it 4 days until the Titans play next, and we still don't know what's going on?
Yeah, it's about 4 days or so.
So Vancouver, if you're listening, the countdown is a ticking, and I want to be able to discuss what the heck you're doing to your roster on Thursday. So get on it, put some announcements out, and yeah, we'll see you on Thursday. So regardless of which platform you're listening or watching on, I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. We'll see you on Thursday at 5 p.m. Central as per usual. I'm Jayne, this is Avast, and this has been Contested.